Outback 761, there's one ahead to land and one to depart before you. 761.
Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are headed out once again in the Leonardo MD-82 Maddog. Clearly as well we're going to be showcasing what I think is another excellent British Midland livery, masterfully created once again by Mr. Mac 2. For our flight today then we're going to be recreating an ex real-world British Midland regional service, taking the aircraft on a very short hop from London's Heathrow airport, where we're currently on the ground, heading north up towards Teesside. Weather-wise, as you can see, a few showers passing through London this morning, but the weather does look to be clearing up. Somewhat of a nicer day up in Teesside. We're holding Newcastle as the alternate. It's a fine morning there as well. We've got a pretty lightly loaded aircraft, only around 80 passengers on board, about 2 tons of freight that we'll be taking up north. Lastly, one of the weaknesses of the Leonardo Maddog, certainly the sound set of the aircraft. So we're also going to be looking at the FTSiM sound pack for the aircraft. We'll talk more about that towards the end of the video, but certainly I think it makes a pretty significant improvement to the product overall. Anyway, ladies and gents, as always, I do hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. It's still fairly early morning here on the ground at London Heathrow. The passengers should be ready to board the aircraft shortly. So let's head for the flight deck and we'll get the mighty Maddog ready to depart. So good morning and welcome once again to the flight deck of the McDonnell Douglas MD-82. We're on stand 247 here at London Heathrow, back for another British Midland service. As discussed, we're going to be taking the aircraft on a very short hop up towards Teesside. As you can see, currently no passengers on board the jet, the cabin crew just working through the last of their security checks. We've obviously boarded the aircraft though, we now have it electrically powered, we've got the battery master on, APU's running, and on the bus we've got the APU bleed air on as well. Continuing on with our flight deck preparations then, galley power can go on. Emergency exit lights can go to arm. No smoking signs are on. For the seatbelts, slightly unusually here, we've actually got the aircraft fueled up ahead of time, so we can get the seatbelt signs on ahead of the boarding. Meter select heat can go to captain. Windshield anti-ice is on, engine anti-ice is off. We'll carry out a stall test. And we'll carry out a max speed warning test.
Overspeed.
Testing out both fire loops. Fire loop A is checked, and we'll do the same for fire loop B. We'll check the cargo fire detection and suppression system as well. That's checked. Your damper is on, and we'll come down to the MCDU and start programming that for our flight. So firstly, checking the status page, we are on MD-82 with the JT8D 217 Alpha engines. Nav database is valid. We'll go to Posinit. Departing London Heathrow, present position as I said, Bay 247, so Echo Golf Lima Lima, and 247 for the stand. We'll line off the GNS 1 position. We'll set that as our FMC position. For the route, again departing out of London Heathrow, bound for Teesside, Echo Golf November Victor. Expecting a departure off runway 27 right this morning.
EC639, taxi uniform, holding point Alpha 2.
For the departure itself then, again runway 27 right, expecting the Umlaut 1 Foxtrot departure. There's the Umlaut 1 Foxtrot. For the route, the departure of course takes us out towards waypoint Umlaut. From there it will be the Tango 418 airway out towards waypoint Welin, Whiskey Echo Lima India November. Next it'll be onto the Tango 420 airway. That's out towards waypoint Akupa, Alpha Kilo Uniform Papa Alpha. Then it'll be the Upper Yankee 250.
Uniform Alpha 2 for runway 27, thank you, 639.
And that takes us out towards waypoint Gasco, which is Golf Alpha Sierra Kilo Oscar. We're joining from Gasco onto the arrival, so we'll activate all of that. And then for the approach itself, with the current weather conditions, expecting the ILS 05 into Teesside, Via waypoint Gasco, no need for a transition. So again, we'll hit execute. Just briefly checking through our legs. We'll come on to plan on the nav display, bring the range right down, and we'll just cycle through our legs, make sure the flight plan is in correctly. Make sure we don't have any discontinuities that we don't want.
So 42 Mike, vacate next right, enter the apron at Victor, parking stand 11.
Next right, Victor, 1142 Mike.
So that correctly takes us all the way in towards waypoint Gasco. You can see from Gasco we do have a discontinuity with the centre fix. We can join that up. So we have Gasco direct to the centre fix. Once again we'll hit execute. Come on to the init ref page. For the nav display there we'll come back to map. And we'll go with a range of 20 miles for the departure. And we'll take data on as well. For the performance in it then, the fuel for our flight today, 5.8 tonnes on the flight plan. We've burned through a little bit now on the APU.
Tombstone 40 Mike, vacate next right, enter the apron at Victor, parking stand 8.
Zero fuel weight, 46.7 tonnes currently, unless there's any last minute changes to the loading. That gives us a gross weight of 52.5, that checks with the flight plan. Reserves, we're carrying Newcastle as our alternate today. We need 2.2 tonnes for the diversion. Cost index of 35, cruise flight level is flight level 300. Wind for the flight today, nice and light, it's 010, 12 knots. And for the ISO deviation, -1 degree. Transition altitude, 6,000 feet, that is correct. And for the takeoff, so for our takeoff data card, it's runway 27 right at London Heathrow. Again, OAT, 12 degrees. Environmental conditions are checked. We're going to be using the wet takeoff speed since we have had a few showers passing through the area as discussed during the introduction. So wet V1 115, VR is 130, and V2 139. It's going to be a toga takeoff, so we'll select that ahead of time on the TCR. And V2 plus 10 139, so 149, we'll just set that up on the MCP. And you can see again a little bit of rain just passing through, hence our takeoff calculation using the wet numbers. So the MCDU setup is complete for the air conditioning and cabin pressurization. Cockpit, cabin and temperature selectors both set to auto. Currently 15 degrees, so hopefully we'll be able to warm the cabin up a little bit before the passengers board. Air conditioning supply is set to auto, and cabin pressurization is set on the primary system. Landing altitude into Teesside is 120 feet. And the current barrow at Teesside is 998. So cabin pressurization is set. Flight director switches can go on. Speed, again we have 149 set in the window. We'll set our airspeed indicator bugs as well for the takeoff. Heading, runway heading out of Heathrow, 269 degrees.
762 starts approved, temperatures at 9, the QNH is 1009, runway 27.
448, vacate right, enter the apron at Victor, parking stand 5.
Victor, stand 5, 448.
So 269 set, and bank angle limiter set to 15 degrees for the departure. Altitude, initial stop height on the SID is 6,000 feet, we'll talk more about that in just a moment's time. So we have 6,000 set and armed, we'll arm up nav as well, again for the departure, so we have nav out armed, the rest of the FMAs we can deal with later on. VHF nav radios, we'll set those, we'll brief up the departure later on. So the departure initially based off the London VOR, which is on a frequency of 113.6. We only need the DME, so we can leave just 1136. Later on we can track outbound on the Midhurst VOR 356, so we'll set that up ahead of time.
BD 639, clear takeoff runway 27, 250 degrees, 16 runway damp.
Clear takeoff runway 27, easy 639.
Always quite fiddly the click spots I find in the Leonardo Maddog. There's 356. As I say, later on tracking off Midhurst, that's 114.0. We'll tune that up on the first officer side. And again, we'll set 356.
Gemstone 05 Mike, ready for departure.
X472 standby break, Gem 05 Mike, hold position.
Holding 05 Mike.
X472 taxi uniform holding point Alpha 2.
So we have 356 on both sides. The departure also based off the Burnham NDB, that's on a frequency of 421.
RAPEX 630, cleared to land, 210 degrees 19.
Clear to land, RAPEX 630.
And we'll tune that up on both ADF radios. So we have 421 set there on both ADFs. So VHF navs are set, position and strobe lights are set to position only for the time being. Altimeters, we have QNH 998 set on all three altimeters. Standby attitude indicator we can set.
RAPEX 761, continue approach 1 ahead, 210 degrees 19.
Continue RAPEX 761.
And lastly then for the departure briefing, so expecting the Umlaut 1 Foxtrot departure off runway 27. That has us departing straight ahead initially out towards 4 miles off the London BOR, then making a right turn in towards the Burnham NDB. After Burnham, tracking out towards the north, inbound towards Umlaut. Stop height as discussed, 6,000 feet at Umlaut. No turns below 590 feet, aerodrome elevation 83 feet. And warning there not to climb, of course, above 6,000 feet until we're cleared otherwise. Again, we've got 6,000 selected and armed up. MSA for the departure, 2,200 feet. There's no significant terrain around London. Weather-wise, as we've touched on already, there are some showers passing through the area. We've catered for that with wet takeoff data. Temperature currently 12 degrees outside, so anticipating we'll probably need the engine anti-ice on pretty early during the climb. In terms of our taxi, currently on stand 247, we're going to be pushing back directly behind us onto the apron at Lima. We'll then take Lima across Bravo onto Alpha, and then turning right onto Alpha, down for holding point Alpha 4. It's going to be an intersection departure this morning. Anyway, that's about it for the preliminary cockpit setup and the briefing. As I say, the cabin crew should hopefully just be finishing up the last of their security checks, so the passengers should be boarding momentarily. That should take around 20 to 30 minutes. As usual, I'll come back to you again once we are fully boarded and more or less ready for the push.
Temperature 05 Mike, after landing F27 line up runway 27.
For landing F27 line up, 05 Mike.
RAPEX 761, there's 1 ahead to land and 1 to depart before you.
Set 61.
RAPEX 630, vacate right taxi to Victor.
So welcome back, we just completed the passenger boarding. We've closed up the aircraft doors, we've got the cockpit door closed up here as well. So we are now ready for the push. Running through the before start checks, doors and hatches are closed, fuel levers are both off. VHF comm radios are set, transponder is set. Crossfeed valves are both open. FMS, we have the MCDU set up complete. Nav and out armed on the FMA with takeoff, and the MCP is set. Hydraulic pumps, we'll set the auxiliary pump on, and same there for the trans pump. GPU has been disconnected, that's the before start checklist complete. So the tug here, just moving into position. We can take the park brake off ahead of time. For the push and start checks, again the crossfeed valves are verified open, push clearance has been obtained, anti-collision light is on, transponder is set, fuel pumps will get the forward and aft, left and right fuel pumps on, centre tank pumps can stay off, we've got no fuel in the centre tank for our flight this morning. Ignition selector can go to system A, as it's the outbound sector. Just waiting here on the push, the air conditioning supply can go off. And we have now commenced the push. We do have positive PSI there on the duct pressure for the start. We'll be starting the right hand engine first, and right engine start. So we have N2 rotation, waiting till we see max motoring there before we introduce the fuel. That should be around 22%.
Yeah, fly runway heading, climb altitude 4,000 feet, 1002, easy 639.
Easy 639, correct. Contact Manchester Control 128.05, bye.
2805, fly easy 6.
And there's max motoring more or less, so the fuel lever for the right engine can go on. Good light off there, you can see the Ryzen EGT. We do have N1 rotation as well. More pressure's coming up.
So 05, Mike, clear takeoff, 210 degrees 18.
Clear takeoff 05, point wrong.
And through 40% on the N2. Disengage the starter, we can cage that up once again.
X630, enter open the Victor, park stand 8.
Just waiting till we see the right hand engine stabilise. Which it now has, so starting the left. Just continuing the push back here on towards Lima. You can see the taxiway line there, we'll push just behind that.
Channel 472, heavy clearance. Channel 472, clear to Gatwick, 92 Tango departure, squawk 5102, expect Manchester, 124.2.
Yeah, looks good for the push. We'll stop the tug. He can disconnect. Park brake can go on. We're now max motoring on the number 1. So fuel lever on. Once again, good light off. Oil pressure's checked. That's coming up. N1 rotation. Tug just clearing. We'll assume we've had our pin, thumb and a wave, so just waiting on the number 1 here to stabilise. Again through 40%. We'll cage up the starter.
Channel 472, line up on 127.
And looks like we do have 2 good starts. So for the after start checks, ignition selector is off, air conditioning supply is set to auto, cabin pressurization set to primary, engine left and right protection not required, fuel heat not required, flaps, it's going to be a flaps 11 takeoff as per our takeoff data card, so flaps 11 selected, and we have flaps 11 indicated, slats are extended to the takeoff position. For the trim we're looking for 5.5 units. So trim is set, auto brake, we'll set to takeoff, and that's armed. Speed brake is armed, flight controls, you have full up, full down, and neutral, full left, full right, and neutral, and on the rudder, full left, full right, and neutral. For the electrical, both engine driven generators are checked, the APU can come off the bus, APU air can come off, and we'll get the APU master off as well. Nose lights can go to dim for the taxi, and that's the taxi checklist complete. So park brake off. Just feeding in some thrust to get the aircraft rolling initially. As discussed during the briefing, turning right here onto Lima.
Security 22, proceed to the 27 crash gate, cross the stopper. Jersey 4831, heavy clearance. Pretty light winds here this morning at Heathrow, just about favouring 27, looking at the windsock. Speedbird 747 off there on our right. So as we discussed, we're going to continue the taxi here, straight ahead on Lima. We'll be crossing over Bravo, onto Alpha, right turn on Alpha, and then down to Alpha 4 holding point for an intersection departure off 27 right.
As we prepare for takeoff, please make sure that your tray table is put away, your seat is upright, and your armrest is down. Please stow your individual video screen and footstool if you have them. Finally, take a look at the safety card in the seat pocket. If you have any questions, please ask your crew. We hope you have a relaxed and enjoyable flight.
Okay, so we're now down at holding point Alpha 4, just been cleared for the takeoff.
Landing lights can go on. Same for the nose lights, they can go to bright. Strobe lights can go on as well. Park brake is off. No traffic there on TCAS. Looks to be visually clear as well on final. Running through our before takeoff checks then. Seatbelt signs are on. Landing lights are on. Strobe lights are on. Annunciator panel is checked. Takeoff briefing, once again it's the Umlaut 1 Foxtrot departure, straight ahead initially with a right turn. Climbing up to an altitude of 6,000 feet, we have 6,000 selected and armed. Takeoff warning test is checked. APU is off, APU bleed air is off. Crossfeed valves are both open. Ignition selector can go to both. Exterior lights are set and flaps. Once again we have flaps 11 indicated and flaps 11 we planned for the takeoff. So nicely lined up here on runway 27 right, we'll just hold the aircraft on the brakes momentarily. Coming up to 40% N1, we'll let the engine stabilise. And take off. So auto throttle in. We have EPA takeoff on the FMA. Checked. And clamp. Checked. There's V1. Coming back on the yoke. We do have positive rate, the gear can come up. And up to 1,000 feet, we'll get the autopilot in. There's 1,500, so we'll come back to climb thrust. We're going to vertical speed, reducing our rate of climb.
London, Virgin 19 is heading at 3 for you.
Virgin 19, Roger, what level are you requesting this time?
Just passing through a little bit of rain. OAT still 11 degrees currently. Speed is checked, we can retract the flaps. We'll get the engine anti-ice on ahead of time here. We know we're going to be continuing the climb.
Virgin 19, climb to level 330.
That's up to level 330, Virgin 1.
And again, speed is checked, we can retract the slats. So aircraft continuing to accelerate, we'll come back into VNAV. Accelerating out to 250 knots and just tracking out towards the north, inbound towards waypoint Umlaut. We'll reset the heading bug.
To maintain level 310 on reaching and maintain heading. Be responsive.
Up through 3,000 feet. Running through the after takeoff checks. Autopilot is set, auto throttle is on. Flaps and slats are retracted. Ignition selector is off. Speed brakes are disarmed. Auto brake is off. Auxiliary and trans hydraulic pumps are both off. And landing lights are off. That's the after takeoff checklist complete. So just coming up through 4,500 feet. Again, we'll be levelling off here at 6,000 till we're over waypoint Umlaut. Reasonably nice weather conditions here for the departure. Outside air temperature is still 12 degrees currently, but we'll just leave the engine anti-ice on until we're comfortable we've cleared any icing. There's 1,000 to go.
It was 5 Whiskey, climb to Apple 330.
10 miles to run towards waypoint Umlaut, so just maintaining 6,000 for another 10 miles.
Continental 67, contact Scottish Control 129.22. Bye-bye.
Continental 67, bye now.
And looks like we are just above the tops of this first cloud layer, so I think we can actually take the engine anti-ice off for the time being. We'll probably need it on again later on as we climb. We'll come on to the progress page on my side. About another 5 miles to run towards waypoint Umlaut. Overall fairly pleasant conditions here out of London. Again, just a few showers around. Should be nice cruising on top once we get up to flight level 300, and pretty nice conditions as well going into Teesside if the forecast is to be believed. So we're looking good here at 6,000 feet, speed 250 knots. We've got FMS speed, nav track and VNAV level. After Umlaut we'll be climbing straight up to cruising flight level, so flight level 300. Currently showing an arrival into Teesside with 3.7 tonnes. As discussed, we need 2.2 tonnes for the diversion. It's about an extra 1.5 currently, a little bit over 30 minutes of extra fuel up our sleeve. We'll obviously check that periodically throughout the flight. Back into the cloud again, 11 degrees on the OAT, so we're still good for the engine anti-ice. And we'll just leave the cabin crew sat down here as well until we get further climb, as we're still fairly low altitude. They're obviously going to be very busy on a very short sector like this though, so we'll let them up as soon as we can. So just about to come overhead Umlaut, we'll pre-select flight level 300 ahead of time.
Speed 2193, maintaining flight level 350.
Speed 2193, roger, continue on the heading.
And there's Umlaut, so we can arm up flight level 300. And we'll go back into VNAV climb. Altitude is armed. So we have FMS EPA, the thrust coming back up to our climb thrust rating. And up through 6,000 feet as well now, so through transition we can set the altimeters 1013. So 1013 on the primary.
The 286 to London, 131.12. Bye-bye.
13112, good idea.
And same there on the secondary. Same on the first officer side. We'll cycle the seatbelt signs, as I said. We'll let the cam crew start their work as soon as we can. We're only going to be in the cruise really for a few minutes. Down through 10 degrees now on the OAT, but again, clear of the cloud for the time being, so no icing considerations. We'll come out on the range here on the nav display.
Origin 19, resume navigation now direct to Tala.
Navigation to Tala, thank you, 19.
Currently showing we're going to be top of climb here at waypoint Welland, but we've still got to accelerate up to our climb speed, so expecting top of climb to be quite a bit further after that. Up through 10,000, so nose landing lights can go off. And you can see now accelerating up to climb speed. Climb speed today, 294 knots up to flight level 300.
Speed 5 Whiskey, maintaining flight level 330.
Speed 5 Whiskey, roger, just continue on the heading.
Okay.
And as a result, our top of climb shifting out much further now up towards waypoint Leicester. So for the climb checks, we are above 10,000. Seatbelt signs. We'll just leave on a little bit longer here until we get through this second layer of cloud. Landing and runway turn-off lights are off. Transition altitude, we have 1013 set on all three altimeters. Centre tank pumps are off. Again, we don't have any fuel in the centre tank for our flight today. Bank angle limiter is set to 15 degrees. Radar is off, unfortunately still inoperative currently in the Leonardo Maddog. Shouldn't need it too much for the flight today, but you can see there we do have weather radar fail, so we'll just leave that off for the flight. Anyway, that's our cruise checklist complete. So as discussed, we're just going to continue our climb here up to flight level 300. That should only take around another 7 minutes or so. Once we're above this cloud layer, we'll let the passengers up. We are a little bit short for time on this sector, so we'll just briefly head outside the aircraft to take a very quick look at the new British Midland livery. Again, we'll only be in the cruise for a couple of minutes. Should be a nice quick descent as well into Teesside, so as usual I'll come back to you just as we're about to hit top of descent and we're ready to start setting the aircraft up for the arrival.
Speed of 175 to London, 13557, bye-bye.
Under 13557, speed of 175, bye-bye.
Continental 45, resume my navigation now, direct to Mike Charlie Tango, then route Renzi.
Okay, Continental 45, we'll proceed direct to Manchester, and then after that...
After Manchester, it's Renzi, Romeo Echo Mike Sierra India.
Roger, Renzi. Good morning, Shuttle 9 Bravo, climbing flight level 290 towards Manchester.
Shuttle 9 Bravo, roger, climb initially flight level 330 Manchester, then it's Westcott Bovington to Heathrow.
Climb initially 330 Manchester, Westcott Bovington, Heathrow, Shuttle 9 Bravo.
United 943, report radar heading now to Scottish Control 129.22, bye-bye.
You have a nice day. Good night.
Yeah, we're trying.
Have one.
So welcome back to the flight deck. We've just reached our top of descent point. As you can see, we have commenced our descent. Initially down to 4,000 feet, that's going to keep us clear of the terrain as we make our approach into Teesside. We'll discuss more about that in just a moment's time. Again, just a couple of minutes spent up at flight level 300 there. Anyway, for now descending down to 4,000, just descending through flight level 280, which means we need about 84 miles to run, currently showing 81. So we're good on profile. As usual, we'll brief up the approach and then we can start setting up the aircraft for the arrival. So as we discussed on the ground in Heathrow, initially coming in via waypoint Gasco out from the southwest for Teesside's ILS runway 05. Frequency for the ILS is 108.5, final approach course 048. Aerodrome elevation 120 feet. We're going down to an MDA Cat 1 of 315. And for the missed approach, it's climbing straight ahead to 2,500 feet, outbound towards the Teesside NDB to take up the hold, otherwise as directed by air traffic control. Transition level as by air traffic, transition altitude is 6,000, we'll call the transition level 6,000 as well for today. I think the sim uses that by default. In terms of the terrain, there is high terrain around Teesside, namely out towards the southwest, which is our approach path, and out towards the south of the field, water out towards the northeast. So our MSA for the arrival 3,200, higher sector MSA 3,300. Weather-wise, much the same as we saw out of Heathrow, hopefully minus the rain. There's no rain forecast at Teesside. So temperature around 12 degrees, wind's fairly light, QNH should be 998. Just set that now on the standby altimeter.
Swiss Air 116, are you requesting any higher this time?
Affirmative, we'd appreciate level 310, Swiss Air 116.
Just stand by.
So we have 998 set. Planning to land as discussed on runway 05. We'll probably have to roll through to the departure end of the runway and backtrack. I think the perimeter taxiway there is not going to give us enough wingtip clearance, so we'll make a 180, come off at Bravo onto the main apron. To do that, planning on using either reverse unless we touch down long, and it's a reasonably short runway. So we'll go with auto brake medium initially. We can always take that out of course to roll through. We can arm that up later on once we're configured. In terms of diversion, we discussed already on the ground, but Newcastle is the alternate for our flight today. We need 2.2 tons for Newcastle. Currently showing arrival with 4.1, so we've got about an extra 1.9 tons. Quite a bit of extra fuel. That's over 30 minutes. The weather's nice in Teesside, so short of any issues with the runway, I can't see any reason that we'll need to divert this morning. Just coming up on flight level 200, back into the cloud layer. We'll take the engine anti-ice on once again and get the passengers sat down. Flight level 200 means we need 60 miles to run, and just showing 62, so still looking good on profile. Just centre up that heading bug once again.
Speed 5 Whiskey, you can resume a navigation now for Margot.
Margot,
Showing about 40 miles to run towards Gasco. We want to be slowed up before we make the turn just to avoid overshooting the turn. We'll keep our speed for now. We should obviously decelerate coming back through flight level 100, and we'll aim to be around 200 knots as we make the turn through Gasco. Anyway, getting the aircraft set up then for the arrival. The ILS, as we discussed, is 108.5.
With 116, climb flight level 310.
116, climb for level 310.
So there's 108.5 on my side.
Speed 2193, report radar heading to Scottish Control 129.22. Bye-bye.
Weather heading to Scottish 12922, speedbird 219.
And same there on the right. Final approach course 048. So 048 on the left. And same on the right. MDA 315, we'll set that on our altimeter bug. There's 315, and the DH as a result 200 feet.
London, good afternoon. The Virgin 5 is level now 280. We're on a headed of 325.
Virgin 5, what are you requesting any higher?
310, ma'am.
Virgin 5 on the heading, climb flight level 310.
Virgin 5, thank you.
And we have DH 200 set. As discussed, aerodrome elevation 120 feet, we have that set for our landing altitude. And landing barrier 998, so the cabin pressurization system is set. Again, for the missed approach, it's climbing straight ahead to the locator, which is on frequency of 347.5. We'll tune that up on both ADF 1 and 2.
Virgin 5, resume navigation direction Mike Charlie Tango.
Right, Mike Charlie Tango, even Manchester, the Virgin 5.
Delta 9 Bravo, continue climb flight level 370.
Climb flight level 370, 9 Bravo.
And we have 347.5 on both sides. As with our departure out of Heathrow, obviously all of the nav aids here, apart from the ILS, are just for backup. We'll be using the aircraft's FMS system for most of the arrival. So down through the first cloud layer, weather looking reasonably nice this morning into Teesside. Down through flight level 140. That means we need about 42 miles to run, showing 45. And we'll keep a good eye on the aircraft here, make sure it decelerates us back towards 250 knots below 10. We've actually got 240 below 10 in the box. So the aircraft is set up for the arrival, running through the descent and approach checks. Approach briefing has been completed. Signs are on. Altimeters will leave for the time being. Auxiliary and trans hydraulic pumps can go back on. Windshield anti-fog not required. Comms and nav radios are set. The ILS is tuned with the amount frequency set. And we'll hold the checklist at the line. In terms of our landing data, we planned on a 51-ton landing. You can see we're just coming below 50.7 currently. That's going to give us a minimum clean of 216 knots. We've already set our speed bugs there on the airspeed indicator. Less than 20 miles now to run towards Gasco. Just coming on the range. And we'll start slowing back to around 200 knots at around 10 miles to run.
Morning, one to American 137, passing 246, 450, heading 330, or actually heading 325.
American 137, roger, continue on the heading, climb flight level 310.
Climb flight level 310, American 1.
Hello, then, the British 435 with you 280 at a direct pole.
British 435, continue on your present heading now until advised.
25, 435.
That turn right heading 330, British 435.
I'm sorry, the heading was 325, my mistake.
Okay, turn right heading 330, please. Swiss Air 116, report cleared level to London 135.57. Bye-bye.
13557, Swiss Air 116, goodbye.
Continental 45, contact London 13557. Bye-bye.
13557, capital 45, good day.
Okay, so we just turned overhead waypoint Gasco. We are now picking up both the localizer and the glide slope. So we have loc track and glide slope capture. Missed approach altitude we said was 2,500 feet. And we have 2,500 set if we need it for the go around. Just coming through 7,000, we'll keep the speed up for now, just coming through 20 miles. We can centre up our heading bug once again.
London, good afternoon, Alitalia 604, level 350.
Alitalia 604, thank you, maintain flight level 350.
So shortly coming up on 6,000 feet, 80 miles to run. Profile looks good there on the ILS. We'll start rolling off our speed now back towards 180 knots.
219, continue with Scottish Control now, 129.22, bye-bye.
Scottish 12922, veg 19, good.
And 170 knots, more or less, is minimum clean without the flaps. Struggling to get the speed back a little bit now though, so we'll take a stage of flap. So flaps 11 selected. And flaps 11 indicated. Looks like the speed is now slowly coming back.
American 137, turn right, heading 330.
Heading 330, mark 137.
Down through 5,500, so we'll set QNH. And we have 998 set on all three altimeters. Still struggling to get the speed back here, so we'll go flaps 15. That should give us quite a bit more drag, hopefully help in our speed reduction. Ever so slightly out to the right of the loc currently, hopefully the aircraft's going to correct for that. Just about visual with the runway here at Teesside.
Virgin 5, contact London 135.57, bye-bye.
7 for the Virgin 5, good day.
So in terms of our approach check, signs are on. Bank angle limiter is set to 15 degrees, ignition selector can go back to both. So just now waiting on the gear, the spoilers and the flaps. We'll maintain 180 till around 7 miles. We'll take the gear in about 3 miles time.
9 Bravo, just be advised about half an hour delays now at Bovingdon to Heathrow.
Okay, 7 Bravo.
Sorry about that.
Looks like the red out's just coming in, trending ever so slightly low here on the glide currently. We'll keep a good eye on that. I find that the aircraft often doesn't do a very good job here of actually flying the glide. In fact, I think we'll manually intervene here, so we'll come into vertical speed. We'll go for a VS of around 600 feet per minute.
Bird 5 Whiskey, contact Scottish Control 129.22, bye-bye.
We'll try arming up the glide slope again. If we don't get it, then we'll just stay in vertical speed. Definitely a bit of an issue with the aircraft. It's a little bit of a shame.
2500.
Let's check 2500. We have the ILS armed once again. And just coming up on 8 miles, so we'll take the gear down. We'll select go around on the TCR just in case we do need to make a go around. And we'll start rolling the speed off back to 160 knots. So again, we have glide slope capture. We'll keep a good eye on the glide slope there. And we'll go flaps 25.
Domination Mark 651 is with you, direct to goals level 350.
Tower 651, thank you, maintain flight level 350.
And flaps 40. Flaps 40 indicated. We can arm up the auto brake and the spoilers. And we'll start bringing our speed back now towards the approach, which we said was 130 knots. The aircraft does seem to be tracking the glide a little bit better this time. Looks like 3 whites, 1 red there on the PAPI. For the landing checks then, we have gear down, 3 greens, flaps 40, speed brakes are armed. Auto brake is armed, cabin is ready. So the landing checklist complete. Same as before, we'll keep a good eye on our glide slope tracking here, and if the aircraft deviates, we'll either come back into vertical speed or just take the autopilot out.
Sleeper 2957, climbing flight level 290, radar heading 165.
Sleeper 2957, thanks. What level would you like?
370 available, 2957.
That's copied.
That's checked. We are stable. So as discussed, we'll touch down, planning on using idle reverse, and we'll probably take the auto brake out fairly quickly here as we're planning on rolling through to the other end of the runway. We'll take out the auto throttle. We're looking for around 51% N1.
And then event 537 heading to London now, sorry, 135.57.
Heading to London, 135.57, so long as can hear, and 527.
Let's check 500. We'll take out the autopilot. Still got 3 whites, 1 red there on the PAPI. Showing just slightly high on the glide as well.
400. 300.
Forgotten just how heavy the controls are on the MD-80. We'll continue.
100.
Back on profile.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Okay, slightly long landing here, so we'll go full reverse.
2 in reverse.
And we'll take that auto brake out fairly quickly here. As I say, we'll just roll through to the end. And we'll make a 180 to backtrack on towards Bravo. Okay, so just vacating off to the right here onto Bravo, making our way in towards the main apron. Rather a nice rainbow off there in the distance. Running through our afterland checks then, flaps can come up. Speed brake is retracted. We'll just take the taxi nice and slowly here to give us some time to run through the afterland checks. Transponder we can leave for now, APU will start.
2 minute 50, contact London, 1 minute 82, bye.
Auto brake
1882, speedbird 850, bye.
is off. Weather radar is off, exterior lights, we'll get the landing lights off. Nose light can go back to dim. Take the strobe lights off as well. In terms of the bay, looks like we're pretty free in terms of our choice. We'll just come in onto bay 4 here by the looks of things.
Attention 4579, so take off to 7 right, then 23017 knots.
So exterior lights are set, nose light is on, taxi clearance has been obtained. Actually looks like we've got a ground vehicle there parked up on bay 4, so we'll come on to bay 2.
Sleeper 566, pull left behind the West Indian Tri-Stan. Your traffic is a company 777 on 23 after he departs line of...
Nose light can come off. On to Bay 2 then, we've already got the fuel truck waiting for us, ready to go for the return sector. And onto the brakes. Just come ever so slightly further forward here to get us roughly in the correct position. Onto the brakes, park brake on. APU is now available, that can come onto the bus. We'll get the APU air on there as well. For the shutdown checks, the lights are set. Auxiliary and trans hydraulic pumps are both off. APU is on the bus. Fuel levers. Good shutdown there on the number 1. And same there on the number 2. Anti-collision light is off. Seatbelt signs are off. Windshield anti-ice is off. Engine anti-ice is off. Meter select switch is set off. Flight directors are both off. Transponder is set to standby, and that's the shutdown checklist complete. So I've got to say, really enjoyed the flight there. The MD-82 is great fun to operate, and we are now safely down on the ground in Teesside.
So there you go guys, I do hope you enjoyed another outing in the Leonardo Maddog. Once again, I think it's a really great add-on, certainly brilliant fun to operate. I do still think it's a little bit of a shame about the pricing. Obviously it's quite an expensive add-on versus the likes of the Phoenix A320 or the PMDG 737. Nevertheless, if you aren't too phased about the price, there's certainly a solid add-on there at its core. And again, excellent fun to operate. It's nice to fly something a little bit different as well. The FTSiM soundpack is a nice addition to the aircraft as well, certainly improves one of the weaker areas of the product. Relatively cheap to pick up. FTSiM use a Patreon subscription model for their soundpacks. So for as little as £2 you can pick up soundpacks that improve the MD-80, the King Air, the Aerosoft Twin Otter to name but a few. For those who are interested, I'll leave a link to their Patreon down in the video description below. On the subject of Patreon, I suppose it would also be remiss of me not to mention there is an Into the Blue Simulations Patreon page should you wish to support the channel. Anyway, that just about wraps up our video for today. Once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. As always, a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. And a very big thank you once again to Mr. Mac2 for creating another beautiful livery. Again, I'll leave a link to the FTSiM Patreon down in the video description below. I'll do the same as well for the livery, which is available over on my flightsim.to page. Anyway guys, I do hope all of you are having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.